All right, good afternoon. You guys have hung it out a long day, but we're going to bring it all to a head. I told you right when Guy got off that what you're going to see is the most powerful evidence to who these entities really are, right here today. I try to bring them whenever I have these opportunities to do these talks. The talk I'm doing today is Unholy Communion, Casualties of a Cosmic War. In relation to our conference title, War of the Worlds, the Invisible Battle, we are talking about a cosmic war. I think you're getting the gist of that from the prior talks that we've been able to share here today. The one thing is, when you have a war, you have casualties. And what I'm going to share with you is the information about these casualties because of this war. What I talk about is alien abduction. It's an experience that people have, and it's been going on for quite some time. Even Guy relayed the idea that this is something that's actually been happening through history in other forms. I must give you a warning. I do this at every talk. A lot of you come here with preconceived notions about this experience and about the UFO phenomenon. The warning is the following information may change your preconceived notions of the alien abduction experience. If you don't want that changed, please leave now. I don't want to be the one that's responsible for making you angry. A lot of people come to these talks wanting to hear certain things. I'm not here to scratch your itching ears. I'm here to share with you evidence of real research that may go against things you've been hearing in this field. What are close encounters, and where does this fit in to the close encounter scheme? In 1972, a scale of measurement was established for alien encounters. When a UFO is sighted, it is called a close encounter of the first kind. When evidence is collected, whether it be trace evidence on the ground, anything that's left, marks, things like that, it is known as a close encounter of the second kind. When contact is made with extraterrestrials, it is known as a close encounter of the third kind. And I think we're all familiar, we're all old enough, well, most of us here. If you guys haven't seen it, there's a movie out there called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that one deals with extraterrestrial contact. The next level is abduction, is a close encounter of the fourth kind. The group that I represent, and I am head of, is CE4 Research Group. My website is CE4Research.com. The CE4 stands for Close Encounter of the Fourth Kind. This encounter has been the most difficult to document in all of the UFO research, is the abduction experience. Alien abduction. Simple description, definition of alien abduction. Taken from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. The terms alien abduction or the abduction phenomenon describe, and I capitalize, subjectively real memories of being taken secretly and or against one's will by apparently non-human entities and subjected to complex physical and psychological, physiological procedures. Remember that word, subjectively real memories. Right now, I want to share with you a short video. I've always felt that this was a very powerful video. It's an example of what people go through with the abduction experience. You've probably, if you guys have been studying this field at all for any amount of years, you've probably seen this video. It airs on TV just about every year. This one's from the A&E channel. Sightings also had this same one on their show when they were on. But this is about a particular family that has gone through this abduction experience, and it talks about what it's done to this family and how it's affected them. And you'll keep in mind that casualties word that I used as you watch this.
Ordinary, everyday people that this has happened to. And it can happen to anybody. I didn't want to believe that it happened to me, but it did.
Joyce Ahrens and her family believe that what happened to them was not an isolated incident. One highly controversial study conducted by the Roper Poll suggests that hundreds of thousands, even millions of Americans, have memories that indicate that they may have been kidnapped by aliens. Abduction researchers believe these abductions happen generation after generation, as this family from West Plains, Missouri can attest. Their story starts one evening in the fall of 1976, in the presumed safety of their home.
I remember just lying there, trying to relax. I'd opened my eyes, I seen a red light flowing across the ceiling, which it almost looked like the Aurora Borealis.
Dan and Joyce Ahrens say the room was dark except for the unusual light, which they describe as about 4 or 5 feet in diameter. They say it hovered over the baby's crib at the foot of their bed where their 1-year-old daughter Heather slept. Dan says that when he tried to get up, he found himself immobilized.
That was the most frightening feeling I guess I've ever had my whole life, is not being able to move.
I was screaming for him to help me because I couldn't move. And I didn't know that he was paralyzed too. And we both sat up in the bed at the same time. And I said, "What the hell was that?"
The incident was over in what seemed like an instant. The baby was standing up in her crib looking dazed but unharmed. Dan and Joyce thought they had just shared a scary dream. That is until 1992, 16 years later. Dan, a computer technician, was working at his keyboard when suddenly he was seized by panic.
I immediately thought I was having a heart attack because I started sweating real bad. My ears were ringing. It was a real tight feeling in my head.
Dan was rushed to the emergency room where doctors ran tests and ordered x-rays. When the results were in, they concluded that Dan had suffered an anxiety attack and sent him home, but the symptoms persisted.
To see him like that was devastating. He couldn't leave the house. He was so scared.
After 6 weeks of constant fear, Dan sat down in front of the TV trying to relax. He turned on a movie that happened to be about alien abductions. Dan experienced a sudden revelation.
There was one part in that movie that this little creature, whatever, was kind of peeking out from around the door, and it was in the dark and the shadows, you know, and everything. And I immediately my heart started racing, and I just kind of completely went out of it again.
Dan wondered, was his anxiety somehow related to the subject of the movie? He later chanced upon another television show about alien abductions and watched an interview with therapist John Carpenter, the National Director of Abduction Research for the Mutual UFO Network. Dan immediately contacted Carpenter for help.
He suffered from a panic disorder at that point in time, and he had flashbacks and nightmarish images of these beings, but didn't understand what was going on and needed some relief.
Dan agreed to an on-camera hypnosis session with Carpenter, during which he revisited that memorable night in 1976, the night he saw the red light over the baby's crib. This time, under hypnosis, he remembers more. He recalls cowering in the corner of his bed as he watched alien beings take his daughter Heather from her crib.
He went to the crib.
He went to the crib.
Picked her up.
Uh-huh.
I can't move.
You can't move. You don't have any control over what's happening to you.
No. They took her.
He took her.
Under separate hypnosis, Dan's wife, Joyce, recalled the same sequence of events. They both say little beings marched them outside. Together, the family was floated onto a spaceship.
I never wanted it to happen to my children. I didn't realize until later that it had. But when they took her, I couldn't do anything.
Heather, now 22 and married, remembers a series of abductions beginning in childhood, when she was forced to play telepathic games with the aliens.
How do you play the game?
If I pick up that one, he'll let me go.
What are you feeling?
I want to go home.
What does he tell you about that?
If I pick it up, he'll let me go.
The Aarons family believes alien kidnappers have not only intruded in the lives of their children, but are now visiting one of their grandchildren.
He calls them his little buddies that come in his room and play. He said he wanted to watch the ship leave. I'm not going to tell him that it's not real, because it is real.
Skeptics would say that Dan, Joyce, and Heather could have constructed their stories together before hypnosis.
But then they'd have to know how to answer the trick questions and the leading suggestions, which I provide. Plus, there are many details they wouldn't know about that we would be looking for as markers for truthfulness and reliability with other abduction data.
Researchers also believe abductees are sincere because of another consistently reported feature of abduction accounts: the insertion of alien implants.
I turned my head to the right, and this taller being came over. And he kept telling me that it would be okay, that they wouldn't hurt me. And then they took this very long needle, and they put it up my right nostril. And I closed my eyes when I heard it crunch. And then I became very calm.
Objects said to be these implants have been recovered. MIT's David Pritchard has examined the composition of one of these reported implants in a laboratory and contends there is absolutely no physical proof of alien activity.
If we don't find physical evidence, and we haven't, then we have to lump this in the category of fairies, elves, near-death experiences people report, or we're going to be back to the days of the medicine men running our society.
With the help of hypnosis, Dan's anxiety subsided and he returned to work. But what once seemed out of this world has now become a part of his life.
If this is some sort of mental thing that's happening to people, then why aren't they out, why aren't the scientists or the doctors or whatever trying to find a cure?
Not something you want to enjoy or want to experience. 10 years that thing has been playing on the A&E channel. On the Sightings channel, they played it for years. This family has gone through hell with this experience. How many of you out here are fathers? Raise your hand if you're a dad. Okay. Raise your hand if you're a mom. Can you guys imagine allowing this to happen to your children if you had an opportunity to make it not happen? Keep that in mind. Can you imagine what these people have gone through, realizing that they had no control to be able to prevent this from happening to their children? Consider what that's like. That's like having your kid kidnapped, having him molested, and you could do nothing about it. And then you always wonder, could I have stopped that? Imagine having to live with that. This is how these people become casualties of this war. It destroys their lives. It's not a good thing. There are people who report experiences that seem to give them a higher spiritual revelation. But as you heard from Guy in his talk, that needs to be questioned. I want to show you some other examples of casualties of this cosmic war. I've worked with about 400 abduction experiencers over the past 13 years. What you're going to see here are some of the testimonies I get from these people, from what they've been through. My eyes were shut and I was paralyzed and felt drugged, sort of like one might feel when very drunk, but without any burning or nausea or dizziness. I felt like I was lying in bed on my back. I thought I must be in my bed. I looked to the left, opened my eyes, expected to see my significant other there. He was not. I didn't see my bedroom. Instead, I saw a concrete gray room. The light extended out a little ways, but most everything was in shadow. I could move my head and looked around. I saw 3 grays standing over me. 2 were kind of holding me. Another was moving around some. I was intrigued watching all this. They were not causing pain, but then they molested me some. And then there was some telepathic conversation. For the most part, it was really annoying and irritating, and also it was hard to focus. I tried to move, but I was paralyzed. Eventually, they got out a big drill and stuck it in my mouth. It hurt. I tried to ignore the pain and think about something else, but it really hurt. And I think I eventually blacked out from the pain. Not a good experience. And this person's had to live with this. Not only this one, but numerous experiences like this. Immediately, I felt like I was curled up into a ball, and this force went around me like a box that got tighter and tighter. I thought I was done for sure, but did not fight it. This was all happening very fast. At that point, in my dream still, because these people recall this being like a dream, I felt my body shoot up from the bed at something faster than light speed. For a second, I thought I had been killed, but as soon as I hit the ceiling, I came back down and woke up. These are real testimonies, real experiences that these people report that I work with. I had nightmares of being put on a table and being tortured. I had nightmares of demons telling me that I was crazy, and if I ever told anyone about them, I would be locked up, and they would never let me wake up again. I would wake up with bruises, sometimes bleeding and gasping for breath. I would wake up to people standing around my bed, speaking to me in another language that I knew, or my bed shaking violently even though there was no earthquake. Some of these things get brought up this morning in Mike Tadar's talk. And the thing that bothered me most was my clock on the nightstand turning into a slithering snake with the time in its eyes, and so many more bizarre things. I thought I was losing my mind. About 10 minutes, I felt a strange sensation of being watched. Some creature appeared and forced a needle under my chest bone into my heart. My ears pounded with the sound of my pulse getting slower and slower. The room around me filled with stars as I was losing consciousness. A black cloud filled my vision till I saw nothing but darkness. I passed out. I awoke in a room. It was not very large, but it was made from what looked like aluminum. It was definitely metal, whatever it was. The ceiling arched down to the floor on one side, as though I were in a room on the side of a semi-dome. I knew that I had been here before. There were times previous when I was not alone. I can remember shrieks of pain and terror coming from another room somewhere. It was a female scream. There was no hiding in this place, no corners where one could conceal themselves. They knew where you were. They could sense your presence. Nothing was hidden from them. They could get whatever they wanted out of you, even if it took a while. Not something enjoyable. One night I awoke with a start. My eyes flew open like a close-up in a horror movie when the dead person comes back to life. I was totally awake with a sense that something was very wrong. That sense moved very quickly to terror. I was paralyzed, unable to move anything except my eyes. To my left, over my husband's sleeping body, I could see 3 figures gliding into the room. Their feet, which I couldn't see because a monk-like robe covered them, never touched the ground. They were coming out of a walk-in closet bedroom, and my first thought was, how did they get in here? It was communicated to me in some fashion, I don't know how, that they had come through the large second-story window in the nursery, glided down the hall, gone through the wall into the master bath, and from the bedroom had glided into the closet. I knew they were very, very angry with me for some reason, but I didn't know why. They communicated to me without speaking that they were going to levitate my stiff body, slam me through the window above our bed, and drop me on my head, killing me. They wanted me to know that my husband would be blamed for my death. They violated me sexually. They were all standing around watching this medical experiment. I was scared. I felt helpless, exposed. I was paralyzed. They had no care about how I felt about this. I was nothing to them. It was inhuman. It's terrifying to think that they can access you and do this kind of thing whenever they want. They don't care how you feel about it. There's no appeal. You have no rights. You have no control over it. I guess the worst thing was the feeling of aloneness, a feeling I couldn't relate to or trust anyone. I felt like an outsider to all of humanity, like I was an alien among a world of people and was the only one of my kind. Anytime I tried to trust someone, tell someone what was happening, they would intervene and hurt me or stall me. They would deceive me so I couldn't tell. Being a childhood experiencer, this started when I was 4 and just kept happening over and over again. They would do things to wreck my trust with other people, parents, family, friends, whatever it took. They had me completely believing that I couldn't trust anyone, that if I tried to, it was certain it wouldn't work, and I would be hurt instead, and I really believed that, and that I was totally alone. I gave up. I was lying in bed, kept awake by the barking dogs, when paralysis set in. I was unable to cry out. I could see nothing but a whitish gray, like a mist or fog, although I sensed someone or something was in my room. My wife didn't awaken. The next thing I knew, I was being levitated above my bed. I had the sensation I was being suspended by what felt like a pole inserted into my rectum. By this time, I was alive with terror, but I couldn't scream. Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life and death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon had never been spoken amongst the scientists and doctors who were working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark raving mad. This is Whitley Strieber. This is a man who, if you've read his books, he talks about these horrific experiences. But yet, through all he's been through, this man promotes contact with these entities. If you remember his book, Communion, New York Times bestseller years ago, promoting communion with these entities. Does this sound like something you guys are interested in, would like to experience? Hence, the title of my talk, Unholy Communion. These people are casualties of this cosmic war. I say cosmic war because we've laid the foundation through the talks today to show you this is not a physical war. These are entities that are other dimensional. with different purposes than we can imagine. Hence, the cosmic war. I've shared with you casualties of that cosmic war. There are effects that these people have that can be recognized. It's termed post-abduction syndrome. The word abduction in PAS refers to alien abduction. PAS does not refer to humans abducting humans, like kidnapping, but only to alien abductions. PAS shares many symptoms with post-traumatic stress disorder, but it is not the same. PAS is based on the symptoms originally listed by alien abduction researcher Bud Hopkins and described in his books Missing Time and Intruders. PAS symptoms include persistent re-experiencing of the traumatic event characterized by flashbacks, persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the trauma, denial of the event, labeling the event something else, phobic avoidance of areas or situation where the contact occurred, refraining from sleep at the time the contact occurred, emotional reaction to literature, pictures, or videos about alien entities. That was described by that gentleman in the video. That was the trigger that brought all that out in that family, that got them in contact with Dr. John Carpenter to try and find out what was happening to them. Numbing of emotions characterized by inability to feel intimacy, pleasure, or to express emotions. Diminished interest of previously enjoyed activities. May have no expectation of normal life events or normal lifespan. May fear abduction with no return or lengthy abduction. Hypervigilance, exaggerated sterile response, irritability, and or panic attacks. This is what these people suffer from that go through this experience. This is effects of a person who's a casualty of a horrific experience. Casualties of a cosmic war. I got to give you a foundation on how I got to where I'm getting ready to go with this. I got involved with the UFO phenomenon in 1992. I was on a vacation trip to Alaska to visit my brother in the Air Force. I live in Florida. I would be flying out of Orlando, headed to Anchorage. It's a 10-hour flight to get to Anchorage from Orlando. That's a long time sitting on a plane. I needed something to read, something to, take the time. I didn't have an iPod back then. This was 92. God, am I that old? Okay. I went looking in the little newsstands they have in the airport. I went through the magazines. I didn't see anything that interested me. Went into the book section where they got paperbacks there and, started looking at those. I grew up an avid science fiction reader. I love science fiction. Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, Frederick Paul, these are some of my favorites. I went over to look at the different paperbacks that they had. One caught my attention. And I thought, great, a science fiction book. I'll grab it and take it with me. I picked up the book. I looked at the cover. I thought, this has got to be science fiction. Turned it over, looked at the back side of this book. Read the synopsis on what it was about. Now I'm puzzled. This book reads like a science fiction title, but on the back it said it was real stuff based on real research from what they said was a real event. That book was UFO Crash at Roswell. Of course, we've got to hear the whole thing about the possibility of what the Roswell event could have been, but this book read like a science fiction book to me. I could not understand how they could say something was real but looked like a science fiction story. I knew that fine line between reality and fantasy, and I knew that science fiction was just an escape mode that you could get into and drift away into another land, another far-off world just for a short time while you're reading it. But this book blurred those lines. So I bought it. I said, how can this be? Started the book on the plane. I was up there in Anchorage visiting my brother for about 9 days, and that book started to consume me. I had to finish this book. So every spare moment I had that I wasn't being the tourist up in Anchorage, I was reading the book. When I got home, I had a hunger to know what this UFO phenomenon was about. I had no idea. There was nothing in my vocabulary dealing with UFOs before picking up that book. I've been working at a boat company at the time, many years there, trying to raise my young son. I took him to Alaska with me. He was 6 years old at the time. I was a busy man. I had worldly things I needed to take care of and survive. I wasn't interested in all this weird stuff called UFOs. Didn't follow it on TV, didn't watch it on the movies really, until this book caught my attention. Very good book. Give them guys credit for the way they put it together. But that started me on a quest to find out what this was about. I came across some people in the Orlando area that belonged to an organization called MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. I went and introduced myself to these people and got to talking with them. Actually, one of them actually had a museum that he had opened up on International Drive in Orlando where the tourist section is. It was open for a couple of years. Ended up being good friends with the guy for a while. He was a former state section director for the Orange County area where Orlando's located. And I got to questioning him, and I went to see his little museum that he had and walked through it. It was a historical type museum that he had set up for the tourists to come to. Really nice. And as I made trips over to talk with him, being he was local to me, about 45 minutes away, he saw that I was starting to develop a keen interest in this whole idea of UFOs. So he pulled me aside and he says, how would you like to go from just reading about this stuff to maybe doing actual investigations? I said, well, that sounds cool. I said, I can really do that? And he says, yeah. He introduced me to MUFON. MUFON builds up field investigators to go out and be able to handle these sighting reports and do the investigations to build a database that they've been building since 1969 when they were founded. They have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documented cases in their database. Still don't have an answer to what this is. It just continues. He showed me how I could go through the training to become a field investigator. Very good training, by the way. They got an excellent manual, Field Investigator's Manual. You have to take a test. It's an open book out of the manual, but let me tell you, it ain't easy. But it'll get you educated on how to do investigations. They'll send you out with other investigators that have done this and get you prepared to actually do investigations. What's interesting as I look at this today, compared to when I first started out, my profession has changed over the years, and I'm actually a safety specialist at the Kennedy Space Center. And part of my job is doing incident investigations. Well, it's interesting that some of that training that I've used all these years fits right in the same way you do an investigation. So that was pretty neat, looking at it from what I've learned over all the years. Once I got to investigator status, he said, over in the Brevard County area where I live, which is on the coast, which is where Kennedy Space Center is located. I live right across the river from the Space Center. He said, there's no MUFON chapter over there. He says, why don't you think about opening up a chapter and heading that chapter? Maybe build up some investigators under you, and as calls come in, you can take sighting reports over there. Well, excuse me, but how cool is that? I mean, what other places would you want to be a UFO investigator? Maybe somewhere out in the desert in Nevada, maybe. Roswell, maybe? Kennedy Space Center? That's too cool. Over that area? Do they have activity? That's classified. No, they do. There's people that talk about seeing things all over that area. I worked on a number of investigations down there back in the early mid-90s. So I decided this would be very good. I would take on a chapter in Brevard County. I did. I became a state section director. State section director for MUFON is over a county or a number of counties. and they always try to throw 2 or 3 more at you. Well, depending on what state you live in, those counties could end up causing you to travel hundreds of miles to follow up on your area to do an investigation. It's all voluntary. You don't get paid as a MUFON representative, but I enjoy it, and it's been an experience being involved with MUFON. I still am a MUFON member. I'm still a field investigator. I've stayed with them. I had the opportunity to talk to the new international director, Clifford Cliff, down at the convention center this afternoon. Nice gentleman, had a good talk with him. But this is where I started getting into the research. First couple of years, it was basically following up on sighting reports. Sighting reports, you get your name out there to where they can come in through the sheriff's department, police department, the newspaper. People don't know who to call, okay, when they see something. But there are a number of people taking calls, believe me. People are always wanting to get on the phone and report something. What you want to do as a MUFON state section director is get your name out there to where they'll give you that call, and you can go out and respond to it, because they sure don't want to do it. You know, they're busy doing real crime and real issues that need, be taken care of. So if you decide you might want to do something like this, I'm giving you the way it works. Another thing that MUFON asks you to do is hold monthly meetings so that the public can be made aware of MUFON's presence, and you can talk to them and educate the public on the whole phenomenon of UFOs. We did this. We used a room like this in the Cocoa Public Library. They don't charge you to use a room. I had it on a once-a-month basis, Sunday afternoon, and I'd open it up, and we get anywhere from half as many to as many people as I see right here in our monthly meetings. These people were hungry to know what this phenomenon was about. And when you tell them you're a MUFON representative and you want to share with them things, they show up. What's interesting is you get a really strange assortment of people showing up. When you advertise that you're having meetings about UFOs to the public, oh yeah, it gets very interesting on the type of people that come to these meetings. We shared with them the work we were doing. We shared videos that we could keep. We tried to entertain them so they keep coming back, and hopefully they become involved. And that's what we kind of do as MUFON reps, okay? But we were still doing UFO sighting investigations. Well, how many can you do before you finally get to the point where you realize you're chasing your tail? I said MUFON's got thousands upon thousands of investigations under their belt since 1969, and they still don't have an answer. Well, something I was starting to see in my monthly meetings were people coming in claiming these odd experiences, saying that they had been in contact or had been through this abduction experience, saying that they had met these entities, whether they liked it or not. Well, we started looking at this and got to thinking, we're chasing lights in the sky. These people come into our meeting and sitting right here at the table said that they've been in contact with the things that are driving the things we're chasing. Excuse me, shouldn't we be talking to them? They're front line, not chasing past history events where you show up hours later or days later to try and do an investigation. You can talk to the people that have been there. So we did. We started taking their stories. We started talking to them and letting them share with us what they've been through. But one thing that scared us in the beginning was we realized these people, they weren't happy people. They were like the people I just read about. They were having tough times. They were troubled. They thought because we were UFO investigators, we had all the answers. We didn't have any answers. We were just wanting to hear their stories, see if we could find some answers. But we wanted to be very careful not to cause any more damage to these people. So we studied, the group that I was with, myself and my investigators, we started focusing on studying every aspect of the UFO abduction experience that we could get our hands on. All the major players that have written or talked about the experience and the research. we consumed it before we started into this, so that we knew what we were dealing with. We wouldn't be caught off guard by surprise. We even had women investigators working with us, because a lot of the details you get from the female experiencers are very personal. Some of them you don't even want to hear, more or less trying to get them to share them to get the whole story out. So it was good to have some female investigators with us. Some heavy stories started coming out. But our findings working in the abduction field, and this is when CE4 Research was formed, because MUFON really wasn't working with the abduction experience at the time. So we formed a separate entity, CE4 Research Group. I made sure that we were all MUFON investigators, so that we had a standard that we can do this by, okay? And hopefully that would be looked at later on as we documented all the research. We were all trained to do investigations, to do the research, and to put it together. All we needed was enough time to get it together to share it, which is what we're doing here. Another part of what we were encompassing in this, listening to these people coming to these meetings. So now we've gone from UFO investigations to abduction research. But there's another aspect that we started to recognize. There seemed to be a spiritual aspect to this phenomenon. A lot of the people coming into these meetings had some strange ideas that I'd never heard of before. When I first picked up that book in 1992, I was a full-blown agnostic humanist. God had no presence in my mind. Neither did UFOs. I mean, I was all about just surviving and working every day, okay? I thought because of that, I would be very, very objective in my research. Well, as I started listening to these people and started seeing some kind of spiritual connection, I started to recognize I got this hole that feels like something's missing. And as I started listening to these people, and in the studies that they were involved in with the New Age and metaphysical studies, I started to see that it and the UFO phenomenon were intertwined. And I needed to find out what that intertwining was. What was that connection? How was this spiritual connection tied in to this UFO phenomenon? So I went and started researching this New Age and metaphysical studies. Over the next 4 years, I was a practitioner of metaphysics. I was consuming everything I could get my hands on with metaphysical New Age studies. What was even really cool is I was converting Christians to the New Age and metaphysical studies because they had no clue what they believed in. It was amazing. So I've had an opportunity to see the UFO phenomenon from a total godless humanist point of view, perspective. I've also had an opportunity to see it from New Age metaphysical eyes. 1996, I'm working with two specific cases that were very, very troubling. It was absolutely wearing myself and my fellow investigators down. The oppression coming from these two cases was just incredible. We had never experienced anything like this. It happened to be that one of my female investigators at the time happened to be my girlfriend. She was a professing Christian, but working with us in the research. I told her to keep her Christianity to myself, and I'll be fair and keep my New Age stuff to myself. So we got along fine that way. Agree to disagree. Just love each other. So that was cool. But she started seeing this oppression and seeing how it was affecting us as researchers. And she was seeing something that we weren't seeing. And she pulls me aside one night and she says, you know, I'm watching what this is doing to you guys, and I think there's something here that you're not recognizing and you have no idea how to control or work with. And I think you need some protection when you're working in this field. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And I pulled out my gemstones and I showed them to her. I said, this one do this, this one do this, this one do this. I said, I'm covered. She says, no, you're not. She says, I can tell you're not. She says, how about some real protection? And she says, okay, what do you got? I'm open to anything, you know. Open minds. Careful with that open mind thing. Sometimes you can be too open. But I said, I'm open. Well, she breaks out a Bible and hands it to me, and she says, it's in here. And I said, no. I says, that book's got nothing to do with the work that I do. She says, I think it does. And I said, no, it doesn't. And I pushed it away. And she says, well, let me ask you, as somebody who you've told you are the most open-minded, objective researcher there is, to take a look at this. Well, I'd been busted. I said, okay, I'll put up with this. Show me what you got. She showed me something that I remember hearing as a child, growing up in a Christian home. But as a teenager during the Vietnam War, I turned it away. I turned away from it. Why did I turn away from the way I was raised in a church? Because I happened to hear somebody tell me at the age of 17, scared to death that my draft card number was going to be pulled and have to go to some deadly place in far off Southeast Asia. And I didn't want to be part of it. I heard somebody tell me, well, you know, this is for God and country. I said, you know what? I've heard my president say that I should be part of this, but I didn't hear God tell me I needed to be part of this war. I walked away from my relationship with the church when I heard that. And I went off and did all the other things that probably some of you guys have done that we wish we hadn't, but they were learning experiences. She shared with me these key phrases in this book, these key scriptures, and for the first time, even though I probably heard it 1,000 times, something out of that book struck home to truth. It showed me that there was a true protection to dealing in experiences like this. And I said, I want that protection. It sounds better than what I got here. And she showed me how to get that protection. November of 1996, I became a believer in Jesus Christ. It's like the blinders came off my eyes, the earplugs came out of my ears, and I saw truth. Well, I'm still a UFO investigator. And I'm still an inquisitive person. I got to know, well, what the heck is a Christian? Show me what a Christian is. I'm agreeing to what you're showing me, but now, if I'm called a Christian, what's a Christian? And I want to hurry real fast. Tell me what it is. I don't want to take 50 years of sitting in Sunday school to learn it. I want to know now. Give it all to me. Well, it happened to be that another one of my my investigators was also a Christian, helping me chase UFOs and abductions. And he says, got this buddy with this powerful Bible study course. It's very powerful, very fast. 2 weeks we can have it done. It's very intense. You learn more than you can learn in 50 years. That's what I want. I had 2 weeks off from the boat company that I work with at Christmas time. We sat watching VHS tapes. Oh, now I'm really showing how old I am. VHS tapes, 2 hours every night. About a week into it, took us 2 weeks to watch them all. Every night we're at this guy's house watching another video on this Bible study course. I'm learning stuff that I was like, wow. Got to this one video, and the guy doing the teaching brought this term up called spiritual warfare. I went, now that sounds cool. What's spiritual warfare? Well, he got in there, and he started talking about it, and he says this one verse. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against spiritual wickedness in the heavenly realm. That's powerful stuff. I'm sitting on the guy's couch watching this being said on a video. In an instant, I've got an alien gray staring me in the face. Right there. While I'm sitting on this couch, I've got an alien gray in this vision in front of my face. And I'm going, oh my. And then in an instant, it morphs into the most horrific thing I had ever seen in my life. And I said, stop that video. And they're like, what? And I said, I got to tell you guys what I just saw. And they're like, that's incredible. What does that mean? And I said, I think I've just been shown who these entities are. Can't prove it. And I said, you know what? We don't belong in this field. We don't need to be part of this research. I'm done. Scared the hell out of me. I said, I'm done with this. They agreed. Okay, we're in agreement with you. It's not what it seems. Can't prove it, but it's not what it seems. I'm a brand new believer in Christ. I don't know anything about what I'm supposed to know. A couple of weeks went by, and I get this small, still voice and says, you got work to do. And I'm going, no, I'm done with this field. And he said, no, you got work to do. I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's bad stuff. Then I hear, I want you to take the truth back to where you came from. Like I said, I'm a new Christian. I said, God, if this is you telling me this, I says, this ain't going to work. I says, I can't take the Bible back to people in the New Age and the metaphysical realm. They don't believe the Bible to be the inerrant word of the Creator God. They believe it to be good stuff written by a bunch of old men. Who knows what they were doing back then, you know. Good book to live by, but that's about it. Good morals in it, but so does a bunch of other books that are out there. That's the way they believe. It's the way I believed. I thought, you know, that I just took care of that. I don't have to deal with that anymore. I said, he said, no, you need to take this truth back. And I said, no, you got to give me something better because this ain't going to work. I said, that took care of him. A couple weeks go by. Here's that small, still voice again. You already got what it takes to share the truth. I said, you got to show me because I'm not getting it. Go back and look at your cases. I pulled my partner aside, Wes at the time, that helped me form CE4. I said, Wes, we need to go back and look at these cases. We're missing something. We went back and pulled this case out. Remember the one I told you about? The great guy was seeing the gray fog and fell asleep. The dogs were barking and felt like he was held up, you know, by a pole, shoved up his rectum in sheer panic. It was his case. We had sat for 2 hours, recorded a 2-hour videotape, sitting in his living room, camera set up. We're sitting on the couch, interviewing him, having him telling us 2 hours worth of his stories. We didn't hear a word he said. Didn't hear a word he said. Didn't catch anything he was saying. Yet here we are, investigators, trained at this. We plugged that videotape in and watched what he was saying, and it was like, do you remember this? Wes says, I don't remember it. But yet we were sitting right there recording it. 6 months prior to this time we just plugged it in to watch it again. So that means it was prior to me becoming a Christian. You know what he says on this videotape? That particular instance that he was talking about right there that I shared with you, he called out, this guy happened to be a new Christian himself. During the experience, while he's held up in the air with his pole shoved and he's in sheer panic, he cries out, Jesus, Jesus, help me. And he is immediately dropped back into bed and wakes up from the experience. We never heard a word he said, but yet we were there recording it. When I saw that on that video, I thought, oh my. If this is real, this I can take back. Because every researcher that we had talked to and all the research we had read said it was impossible to stop an alien abduction experience. It had never been done. Did I have something real here? I needed to know. I'm too new a Christian to even trust God. So I get on the phone and I start calling the top abduction researchers around the country. They're nice guys, just like me. Some of you have talked to them personally. They're nice people. I said, guys, I got an interesting case here. I don't know what to make of it. They said, well, share it with us. I did. told them the story. Said, have you ever come across anything like this? Can we go off the record? They all said this. I said, sure, we can go off the record. That means I can tell you what they said, but I can't tell you who said it. Every one of them said, we've had cases like that. And I said, well, why haven't you shared this information? You say that it can't even be stopped, but yet now you're saying they can be stopped, and you've come across people that have stopped it like this. Why haven't you shared this information? We're relying on you for the truth. And they said, well, we really didn't know what to make of that. And I said, really? I said, I would have been fine with that answer, but it was usually followed by another answer. We really didn't want to go there because it might affect our credibility in the realm. You know, all through this realm, you hear cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up. Government this, government that. Government's covering up. How many times you guys have heard this, right? I just gave you a cover-up. And that cover-up is not by the government. It's by the leading researchers that you have been relying on for the truth all these years. Can I prove it? I hold confidentiality. I will never share their names. I learned that in MUFON. You come to me and you want to share your story, but you don't want your name out there, I will respect it to the death. I'll never share who that was. So I knew that I had to go and get this evidence myself. Because I knew it was there. They just told me. In 13 years, since becoming a believer, I have worked with over 400 cases. If you go to my website at CE4Research.com, we've got, I think, 94 up there now that they publicly allowed me to post. They're in written form, and they're also in recorded audio form. You can hear the people themselves that can testify that they too, using the name and authority of Jesus Christ, has stopped this experience, not only while it was happening, but they've terminated it from happening in their life. This is a piece of the puzzle, of the UFO puzzle. This whole UFO phenomenon is just a big puzzle. There's researchers out there with each of their own piece. They all need to take those pieces and put them on the table to see what the picture is going to look like. Throughout the years, my particular piece of this puzzle is unwanted. I actually did the talk at the 60th anniversary here for Roswell for the city. The unwanted piece of the UFO puzzle. I've earned the title since 2008 when I shared this talk. I can say I'm probably the most hated man in the UFO realm. They don't want this piece of the puzzle. Is this starting to come together after hearing guys talk? This is evidence that these entities are not who they say they are because of the way they respond to that name. Why would aliens respond like that? They don't. Guys showed us that they preach a new message. They're evangelizing a new gospel that we are warned about to not follow. There are so many different religions in this world, but they only come here to preach against one. Why is that? When all of the other ones don't even agree with each other except in one thing. You know what that one thing is that all the other religions agree with on? They're anti-Christ. They're only here to preach against one religion, and that's one that professes Christ. And here, this same Christ, this same name, puts these entities in their place. We hear about high technology this, high technology that from these entities. Excuse me, but if you really go back and look at the abilities that angels have in Scripture, you'll see that this so-called appearance of high technology is only their ability. This is the emperor's new clothes. The guy shared that with you. This experience has been around in many guises. This is the emperor's new clothes, one that you would accept. What's the purpose behind it? Guy talked about that. The purpose is to take our faith and our eyes away from the one true God. There is a war going on, a cosmic war. Your souls are the prize. In this research, secular researchers are still asking the question, why does this happen to some people? Guess what? I got 3 answers. They're still asking the question. It's either one of the 3 or a combination of the 3 that gets you this experience. And this is through the evidence of the cases that I've worked with. First one, you asked for it. Some people actually ask to have the experience and know what it is like or about. They come to the table. They see us working with abduction information. They go, man, I'd sure like to know what that's about. I'd like to have that experience so I could see. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Be very careful what you ask for. The second one, some people unknowingly open a door to the experience by being involved in the new age of occult activities. When you engage in the unknown things outside of God, this is what the evidence shows, the Creator and His Word, you make yourself vulnerable to these entities. We have found this reason to be the most often found root cause. You might not have known that this door was going to be opened by what you've dabbled in. Scripture warns us about dealing in things outside of God. It says, you got questions about the unknown, you go to Him. Jeremiah 33:3. Isn't that interesting, that number, 33:3? You ever heard that in all this stuff? Imagine. The enemy picked that particular verse number to come and try to offer you another answer. That particular verse, by the way, it says, if you've got questions about things unknown, ask Him. Okay? They're trying to go around that one. The last one puzzled us for a while. You are part of a generational cycle or generational curse. Okay? What brings that one up? We had people that we know actually stated they asked for the experience, they got it. We had people that were dabbling in who knows what, they had it. Okay, we were able to track back where that open door came from. The one that puzzled us the most was when adults were telling us that they'd had the experience since they were children. These children are too innocent to do either one of the first 2. So where did experience come from? Why was it allowed? What made it happen? We started asking them as researchers, investigators, tell me about your parents. What were they doing? Were they believers in Christ? Were they followers of any other religion? Were they dabbling in this? Were they involved in, what were they involved in? Open doors all the way through it, the family life. Biblical scripture tells us that the head of the household keeps the spiritual covering over the family. In every instance, when we find that people had had the experience since they were children, there was no godly covering over the family. The children were allowed to be affected. Hang on to that one. You want to keep your kids protected from this? I just gave it to you. 3 answers to the question that they're still asking. You guys seen this movie? Any of you? The new one that come out? Fourth Kind? Yeah? You know the reaction you get when you ask people if they've seen this movie? For some of you that have seen it? Oh, that's all fake. Why do they say that? Because the guys that put this movie together did a genius job of disinformation. We've waited on this Fourth Kind movie for a decade or more. After the Third Kind, those of us who know the abduction experience said, we need this movie, The Fourth Kind. Sure enough, it come out. And guess what? It's hated. Because when people go to see this movie, they feel so cheated. Because Mila Jovovich comes right out in the beginning of the movie as her true self and tells you this is based on reality. and then you find out that it's not. You've been lied to. So the effect that you have after seeing this movie, your reaction is, we've been cheated. We've been lied to. So because of that, you think the whole thing is garbage. You can't even think about what you saw anymore. You feel so cheated by it. This is sheer marketing genius. Because what I'm going to show you is what they've done with this movie. For those of you that have seen it, you know absolutely that there is real stuff in that movie. But most people can't even remember it because they feel cheated by the movie itself. They have taken and put the absolute truth in your face for you to see what this experience is about. And then they snatch it away and make you distrust it by making you feel cheated because you were lied to. This is genius disinformation. For those of you that have experienced disinformation, this is genius. And this movie was a perfect example of it. Want me to show you an example? You guys might have missed it. Those of you that did get to see the movie. Most important message that I found in this movie, even though there was a lot of them, I feel was this one. This is at the end of the movie when the supposed Abigail, Dr. Abigail, is being interviewed. Okay? This is her quoting. She's talking about the experience. It was hopelessness. She's a casualty of a cosmic war, just like what we saw from the other stuff, right? Destroyed her. She's they're showing you an example of what this does to people. She says it cannot be God, but it could pretend to be. That is the most powerful message this movie had to share. They stuck it in your face, they gave you what the research shows, and then they made you not believe it by making you think the whole movie you were lied to. That is sheer genius. So I bring it back so you can see it. Go and watch the movie, you'll see it now. You know what? This is all shock and awe. I just shared all the shock with you. How about some awe? There is a hope for people that are casualties of this cosmic war. In the cases that we worked with, in the testimonies of the cases that I've worked with over the years, over 400, the evidence shows that your life can be taken back through the name and authority of Jesus Christ. But yet they don't want this information to be shared. You ask them why. Can I prove this? What I'm getting ready to show you, I told you this was coming. That's why you're here. The most powerful evidence in the world today to the true nature of the alien entities. And what would that evidence be? The people themselves that have been able to stop the experience. I can tell you I got 400 cases. I can tell you I got 100 of them, right at 100 of them online. You can read them. You can listen to their audio. You're going, that may as well give me a fuzzy picture of a UFO. How do I know they're real? I can say, trust me, what I've told you is real. I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm going to tell you? Don't trust me. Don't trust Joe Jordan. Trust the evidence. I'm going to bring you the evidence. Evidence you can touch, evidence you can question, evidence that will tell you how their lives have been changed because they've been able to stop the experience through the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Would that work? Let me give you one. First of all, Guy Malone. You heard him talk. earlier today in his talk. He is one of those testimonies. Okay, there's physical evidence. Go talk to him. Go touch him. Ask him how his life has changed. That's just the beginning. Nicole, this guy's wife, she's been through this. She's set free from it. Living testimony that you can see. Okay? Patrice, right there. Raise your hand. Patrice has been through this experience. Patrice knows that the name and authority of Jesus Christ can put these entities in their place. This is living evidence right here among you. Okay? Guys, can you take a second and come up so they can see you? Come on up. Marie, she's coming up over here on the right. This is another one. Can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. Can put them in their place. This is evidence. I'm not bringing you fuzzy pictures. I'm bringing you people that you can talk to. People that you can test for yourself whether this is real for them. They can give you hope for this experience, to show you there is an absolute hope. Is this enough? Is this provable? Pastor Lawrence. Pastor Lawrence is a pastor here in town, New Destiny Church. Pastor Lawrence works in the field of spiritual warfare. This man here will probably knock your socks off. You get an hour to talk with him about what he's encountered and what he's been able to put in its place. I want you to know that Pastor Lawrence and his congregation here in Roswell is one of the churches, very few churches, that take a stand against this experience and against this phenomenon and against this activity that goes on in this town that it promotes. I commend him for that. He knows this truth. Okay? Got any other ones out there that I don't know about that might want to say, I'm one of those testimonies? You want to come up and be evidence? Jackie, come on up. Got enough yet? Is this convincing yet? Live evidence that you can talk to. I'm bringing it to you. It's the most powerful, irrefutable evidence in the world to who these entities are, because they've got their lives back after being casualties of a cosmic war. Let me give you one even better. Remember the video I showed in the beginning of that family? Joyce Aaron says, you know, I wish there was a cure. You know what? Joyce found that cure. Joyce Aarons, come on up. I met Joyce in Florida. This experience destroyed her family. She left her family, went looking for the truth. She left Missouri, ended up in Florida. The last night, the very last episode of X-Files was on a Sunday night. I'm sitting there watching it. My buddy Billy Cox from the Florida Today newspaper, some of you might know the name, Guy mentioned him in his talk, had done a great article on the history of X-Files coming into the last show. And he made the mistake of putting not only my name, which I was okay with, but where I lived. Well, that enabled her to find me in the phone book. And I get this phone call about 30 minutes into my favorite show, the last episode. And my wife says, my wife answered the phone and says, I think you need to take this call. And I'm going, it's X-Files. And she says, no, I think you need to take this call. I did. For 45 minutes, interrupting my favorite show in the last one. Joyce is telling me all about being this special person, being an abductee. Well, you know, as more and more time went on to me listening to her, the more I realized this ain't a happy woman. But she found me because I was MUFON, figured I had answers. She needed to share. And I said, you know what? We need to get together. We did. I shared with her what I had come across after I let her share her story. We were in a restaurant. I invited her to, neutral ground. I went in there, shared with what I had. I could see she was getting agitated, touching things that she didn't want to hear. And she says, I got to go. I thought, okay, that's the last I'll see of Joyce. Joyce calls me a couple days later. She says, I want that. I had the opportunity inviting Joyce over to my home. She gave her life to Christ in my living room. I had the opportunity of working with Joyce for about 4 years, had her in my church, teaching her up what it is to be a believer. She put these entities and experiences in their place. She was working as a floral arrangement artist in one of the studios there in the area. She's on the way to work one morning, and that small, still voice told her to go to the beach. She's in her dress and heels and goes down, kicks her heels off, walks on the beach. That voice told her, go home. She went home to Missouri, back to her family. Didn't get preachy with them, just showed them that she wasn't who she was before. She had her life back. They didn't. They were still miserable, still believing all the lies of the entities, still following it. I had Joyce first give her testimony, just like this, 2003 at the Ancient of Days conference that Guy held here in Roswell. She's been here again 2008, last year 2009, and here she is again. We just recently had a talk that Guy and Nicole came to Florida. I invited them down. I've got DVDs with Guy and I doing these talks on DVD together. And I had Joyce come too. I let all the testimonies speak in that one. Not just come up and make themselves available, but actually speak. And Joyce made the comment, and it's on the DVD, you know, my family's still walking the fence. That was November. She calls me in February. Says, you're not going to believe this. Her husband, when she got back in November, had already been diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer, and it was acting on him fast. He came to the truth, gave his life to Christ, actually had an encounter after he did. These entities didn't want him going to the grave with the truth. They tried to deceive him. He was having an experience, and Joyce was there. And she was able to testify right here that Dan was able to rebuke these entities and put them in their place. Dan passed away just recently, but he's able to leave his testimony. His family's becoming healed. That video that's been playing 10 years, they don't have the rest of the story. This is the first time that you're able to see this publicly. Not just Joyce, who found it years ago, the truth, but also her husband. And we have his testimony to share. That's not all. You saw her son and daughter in that video, didn't you? Her daughter's still walking the fence. We're still waiting for her. But her son, Danny, he's here today too. Come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is living evidence of lives changed, destroyed by these creatures, brought back to normal lives, brought back to hope through the name and authority of Jesus Christ. The research shows, the documented evidence I have, that this works. No other name works. Not for a permanent effect. This name works. For some reason, they don't want this information out there. You ask them why not. These people wanted it. These people got it. These people can testify it's real. That's what this is about. Living evidence. The most powerful evidence showing casualties of a cosmic war, but they can be healed. This experience is not what it seems to be. This is also from David Allen Lewis. Guy quoted him earlier. In dealing with the mystery of UFOs, we are not on the lunatic fringe of theology. Instead, we stand on your behalf in the front line of battle. We are in defensive warfare at a major point of assault on humanity. That is what this war is about. It's a war for your souls. Don't be a casualty of this cosmic war. You've seen what opens the doors to becoming one. You've seen how we close the door to no longer be one. Casualties of a cosmic war. This war has been going on since the beginning of time. These entities, the Nakesh, if you look up the word and what it means in Scripture, the Hebrew word Nakesh for the entity in the garden, the shining ones. This is right, they're teaching the same lie right out of the garden. It hasn't changed. Only the costume has changed. The facade that they wear has changed to fit the time. But it's the same lie from the garden. We're still seeing it. Ladies and gentlemen, the most powerful evidence in the world today of who these entities are. They're right here. Please talk to them. Test the evidence. In closing, and I close this every time I do this talk. This is Hebrew, by the way. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord God, King and ruler of the universe. The line in the sand has been drawn. You need to choose which side you're on. You going to be a casualty, or are you going to come through this on the winning side? The choice is yours. You now have all of the pieces of the puzzle to put the picture together. I ask you, what does the picture show you? Thank you.